We are continuing our discussions about the Town of Hingham water acquisition, and our guests this afternoon are Selectman Paul Healey and Town Administrator Tom Mayo. And Paul, just briefly, you have served on the Board of Selectmen for 6 years.
That's correct.
You've 19 years on the Planning Board.
Yes.
And roughly 30 years plus of service to the Town of Hingham.
37 years.
37 years to be exact.
Yes. Yes.
And Tom, you as Town Administrator, you've been here for approximately 3+ years, working on 4 now?
That's right. That's right.
And so let's just get right to some of the questions. And first off, starting with who will operate the water company?
So I think the plan is that post-town meeting vote, we would end up issuing a request for proposals, an RFP, to hire a professional water system operator. Companies that do this for a living. This is what their business is. They'll come in and bring their expertise and their expert staff, and they'll operate the water system for us. In addition, I should add to that, sure, that we would be hiring a water superintendent to kind of liaise between the private water system operator that we'll be hiring under contract and the town government, in this case, the Board of Water Commissioners or the Board of Selectmen in our situation.
And so within that operational governance structure, if you will, and I had spoken previously with Selectman Karen Johnson about the governance piece, and she mentioned the Citizens Advisory Board. Could you expand a little bit upon how that works between the water superintendent and the Citizens Advisory Board and up to the executive branch of the Board of Selectmen?
Sure. So there's the Citizens Advisory Board and the Transition Committee are on either side on our org chart of the immediate org chart chain, going from the water superintendent through myself to the Board of Water Commissioners. And those two citizen advisory committees, in essence, will be reporting through the superintendent and on up, and also advising directly with the Board of Water Commissioners as appropriate. But the water superintendent is going to play a key role in making sure that the residents of all 3 communities and their voices are heard. So,
thank you. Paul, let's talk about the legacy, because given your years of service to the Town of Hingham, I think you have perhaps the best perspective relative to the legacy of the water system over the past 30+ years here in Hingham.
Well, I've grown up in the community as a young boy, raising my own children and now my grandchildren in the community. I will confess that I've enjoyed swimming in Ackwood Pond when I shouldn't have, but water is something that is universal to all. I don't care where in the world you are, you need water to live. And the ability of the residents of Hull, Hingham, and those small group of residents served by the water system in Cohasset, really it's compelling that we have the ability to control this precious natural resource in such a way that the best interests of the people getting this water are served, where profit is not the motivating factor. It's the effective, efficient delivery of clean, drinkable water with a system that is well maintained and minimizes the waste of a resource that is becoming, I think we can take notice of the fact that water is becoming more scarce. And, quite frankly, that was a motivating factor in the town undertaking this effort in 2012. We were looking at unaccounted for water loss that was unacceptably high, an unresponsive operator, Aquarian, not addressing it effectively. So, we undertook this effort in a very deliberate, considered manner to explore, what the challenges were and how best to address it. I believe that we've done that. I think that we have made a compelling argument that it's in the best interest of the town, not just the town of Hingham, but the town of Hull and Cohasset to take this next logical step. You know, I served on the planning board, as you mentioned previously, and the issue of water was always and will remain something that any kind of planning that the town has to deal with, a part of the analysis. And to have control over that water gives us the ability to make very considered, thoughtful decisions on development proposals before us. We don't have that dynamic in place presently, and that is problematic. Some people fear that development will spike up, but the reality is it just simply won't. A number of years ago when I got elected to the board, I felt that we needed some kind of 30,000 foot look down view on this area of Hingham. So I proposed a committee to study that, which my then colleagues on the board embraced. We formed this committee called the South Hingham Working Group. We had 30 public meetings, 3 years of effort. We published what I call a white paper, but a final report. And in that, it broke it down into a number of categories, but for purposes of this conversation, we spoke to the issue of water capacity. And it's pretty clear that we are bumping up against the limits of what can be done. And we didn't come out with any conclusions per se. We spoke to opportunities and challenges. So, this is something that the town has been doing for years. Other examples of that are acquisitions of property to be retained as open space to preserve the quality of the aquifer. It's a single source aquifer. It's the Ware River watershed. The DEP, which oversees the operation of all water systems in the Commonwealth, concluded that this is a highly stressed watershed. And because of that, it limits any further withdrawals beyond the 3.51 million gallons a day withdrawal limit that's imposed. That translates to over 1.2 billion gallons of water a year. When you're looking at a system that big with an unaccounted for water loss, and that's due to leaky pipes, leaky water mains, that's problematic. We have done what we can do. This is the next logical step. We've protected the area all around, these wellheads, these water sources. The entire South Hingham is virtually the watershed. So, at this point, we can continue to do that, but to forego this generational opportunity to take control of our own destiny with respect to water would be, that'd be a terrible loss for us.
Our infrastructure, when I'm talking about the mains, from an operational standpoint in terms of scheduling and opening up the roads. And Tom, take a stab at this for me for a minute. In the town of Hull, we've got some old mains, some of them approaching 100 years old, if not even more so. And of course, we've got the big gas work, upgrading, if you will, that's taking place in Hingham. So there's going to be a lot of open roads, if you will, over the next few years. How do you see this from an operational standpoint, and what can you say to the voters that gives them a sense that there's some organization and process that's going to take place to this regard?
Sure. So let me start by stating what I hope is obvious to most people, is that we are not going to replace every water main in Hingham, Hull, and Cohasset in year one. That isn't going to happen. What we need to do is roll out in a logical capital investment plan that improves the infrastructure in the streets throughout Service Area A, Hingham, Hull, and Cohasset, in an appropriate way. And that means coordinating with the local road building processes, both in Hingham and in Hull. And both towns are right now in the midst of an accelerated road building schedule. It's important that we do that work in a coordinated way so that we're not tearing up roads after they've already been repaved. That could end up costing taxpayers money, and that's not what we're looking to do. And we think that if through a local ownership, the level of coordination between the departments, if you will, at that phase would likely be easier than if we were working with an outside agency such as a privately owned third party.
So a ratepayer is a ratepayer is a ratepayer, regardless of whether they are in Hingham, Hull, or Cohasset.
That's exactly
Get
right.
that. Yeah. Insofar as how that ratepayer is able to approach the public-owned water company and express their concerns and views, how do you see that happening vis-a-vis do they show up at town meeting? Do they go through the Citizens Advisory Board? How do you see that approach?
So I would think that they would likely start with the Citizens Advisory Board. They'll have representatives in each community to help navigate their question. I think at that point, depending on the type of question as it occurs, things can usually be answered pretty easily and pretty quickly. The ones that can't would probably elevate through the superintendent, the water superintendent. And ultimately, if again, still problematic and not answered, then it would come up through me and ultimately to the Board of Water Commissioners. And I think it's a strong governance model.
Tom, let's look at this water system in the context of the public model, and how does that fit under the umbrella of the town administration?
Sure, thank you for that question. We had the question at one of our public meetings the other day about whether or not the town was up to this responsibility. And I chuckle a little bit because, quite frankly, responsibility is what we do in local government. We keep you safe through our police departments. We keep you, safe and well through our fire departments. We just had the other day, our fire chief was in front of us recounting a time when they had saved someone's life using some new equipment that was had just recently been purchased. That stuff happens every day. We don't always hear about the successes. Too often, we only hear about the tragedies. Successes are common. They're regular. Local government does this stuff really well. In addition to public safety, or as part of public safety, really, we enforce things like building codes to make sure that we're all in safe structures. We educate and care for the children of the town every day. Our council on aging is helping to care for the elderly community. There's a lot. We have a veteran service agent that cares very deeply about the veterans in this community. All we do is responsibility. That's how I see local government. And I can tell you, I've been around a long time, and I see Hingham, and I stack it up against the other towns in this wonderful state of ours. And Hingham does it really, really well. And I don't believe that the responsibility question is one that we wouldn't be up to the task on. We're there. We're ready to take this on, and look forward to the opportunity.
I'd just like to expand upon that briefly, if I could. As a selectman, I've been tasked, along with my two colleagues, Mary and Karen, to make appointments to town boards. And after each year's town meeting, we invite people that are interested in serving to step forward. And we've never had a shortage of people willing to serve. And the quality of volunteers is truly breathtaking. And we've put people on committees where we think and believe that their talents and interests and aptitudes are best served. And having served on various boards over the years, I've had occasion to work with many of the boards that would be involved in the water company issue. And I can tell you, Joe, that the dedication and the commitment and the altruistic energy that comes forward from those committees is, to me, it's what makes the community so special. It isn't just the houses and the beautiful vista, although that's important, but it's the people within it. And, I'm not a politician. Honest to God, I'm not. I'm a public servant. I'm doing this because I love this town. It's important for the viewing audience to appreciate the fact that it isn't just the water mains that we focus on. Last night we attended a meeting that was hosted by the Hull Board of Selectmen, who graciously invited us to present, and we did. And one of the things that we heard from the residents of Hull was the concern about pressure,
Water
flow
pressure,
rate.
yes.
Exactly. And this is something that we confront within the town of Hingham as well, in this area of town. And we've identified certain infrastructure needs that could address that. And the irony is that the cost to address that is roughly equivalent to the lobbying costs that Aquarian has spent resisting this issue to the public. It's not enough just to have the water mains. You need to have the pressure in the system so that when the pumper rolls up to the hydrant, hooks up the hoses, something actually comes out that puts the fire out. I'm reluctant to speak into the specifics of it because I don't want to, engage in scare tactics here. Right. I don't think that this is the forum for that. But this is something that the water company's been pretty quiet about. And we nibble around the edges on the issue, but it simply just isn't being addressed. And with the town taking over the responsibility for the maintenance and the infrastructure, we can address it, and we will. We have a different level of commitment.
Yes.
And I think that's important for anybody deciding this issue. We're not motivated by profit at all. What we're here to do is run the best water system possible for the community it serves, Hingham, Hull, and the northern part of Cohasset.
Thank you. That meeting that you referred to last night between the boards of selectmen in both Hingham and in Hull, was this a first ever between these two municipal governments?
No, not at all. And in fact, the town of Hingham enjoys a very positive, cooperative relationship with the town of Hull. By way of illustration, our police and fire forces work very well. I related a memory that I had in that capacity many years ago. But more recently, on the 3A task force, the town of Hingham undertook an effort to improve the corridor going into the town of Hull.
The road diet.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I might point out to the viewing audiences that this effort so impressed the DOT, the Department of Transportation, that it's been selected as a kind of as a piece to speak to in a symposium that it will have describing the cooperative efforts between the towns. And that truly was a cooperative effort. Tom and I and Roger Fernandez, who's our town engineer, our assistant town engineer, Harry Sylvester, the 3A task force, which comprised Judy Sneath as its chair, Alan Peralt, Bryce Blair, myself. We traveled to Hull, Deirdre Anderson. We traveled to Hull on 4 separate occasions. We had 2 public forums where we answered questions, addressed concerns. We worked collaboratively to modify the submittal to the state when we submitted the 25% design, which factored in the concerns that Hull raised. We have a combined public safety dispatch that we've been working with successfully for a number of years with 4 different towns. Hull is one of those towns. Our mutual aid pacts are strong. The relationship between the public safety forces is a positive one. We have the Old Colony Library Network, and I think that many of the residents from Hull enjoy, the use of the library. And, we view the town of Hull, and certainly Cohasset as well, as neighbors. They're just not abutters. And we have no trouble working cooperatively with them, listening to their concerns and addressing them appropriately.
Staying with infrastructure for just a minute, and you had alluded to pressure, and we certainly wouldn't want to have to experience what Boston recently experienced with that massive fire, I think might have taken place with the casket company, and the responding fire departments began to experience some water pressure issues, not entirely, but some, which took longer to put that fire down. Historically, there was a water tower in Hull many, many years back. Do you envision, perhaps, as we go forward under a public-owned water system, that one might revisit that thought to putting that water tower, building a water tower to alleviate some water pressure issues?
Great question. That assuming that the town takes the vote that we hope it does, it's our intention to study the system in its entirety and identify needs. You're talking about the tank at Strawberry Hill.
Yes.
That came up last night.
Okay.
There's a genuine concern about fire pressure. And, we certainly don't want to find out the hard way that the town of Hull didn't have enough water pressure to put out a fire on Spinnaker Island or a large complex where they just simply didn't have it. So, the answer is we will study all of that. And again, the goal is not to maximize profit, it's to maximize the efficiency of the system. Minimize waste, maximize efficiency. Good, clean drinking water, good pressure to put out fires. The fire departments don't want to be saving foundations. They want to save lives, and they want to save structures. And, we're in total alignment. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with the fire chief on the way here this morning, and, updated him on the concerns expressed by the citizens of Hull last night at this meeting, keeping him fully in the loop. I'm sure that he'll be speaking with, his fellow fire chief in Hull.
I've always asked this question of our previous administrators and officials for the town of Hingham. So I'm going to put it to you both. Why should Hingham buy its water company? Who wants to take that?
Do you want to take the first part of that, or you want me to?
Sure. So, I'll speak to the municipal, the municipal ownership portion of it. Okay. And I think that what we heard during one of our public hearings recently was an insinuation that the town doesn't understand responsibility. And I chuckle as I answer that because, quite frankly, we are all we do is responsibility. Police departments, that's life, that's liberty, right? Fire departments. We had a story, we had our fire chief before us the other day at a selectmen's meeting. He was recounting an opportunity that they had to save someone's life using some new equipment that we had recently purchased. And that's real. That stuff happens on a daily basis. We don't always hear about it, we hear about the tragedies, but we don't always often hear about the successes. And these are the highest levels of responsibility that societies engage in, and local governments do it all the time. And I've been around for a while, and I can tell you that Hingham does it exceptionally well. We accept responsibility, we take it seriously, and we perform when called upon.
I think you have to look at the motivation behind it. And I may sound like a broken record here, but we're not motivated by profit. What we're motivated by is a quality of life issue. And we're determined to make the water system, which is vital to our survival, as efficient as it can possibly be. And we've reached a collective conclusion that the individuals, the corporation that presently run it, are not motivated by the same things we are. They have a profit motive. And they may cry foul at that, but you simply have to look at the money that they've put into replacing the water mains. And I'm sure my colleagues, that you've spoken with previously, have identified that. But the plain fact of the matter is they're not replacing the water mains at a rate that's fast enough to render the system efficient. And how do I know that? Because the unaccounted for water continues to plague the system. They haven't tackled this aggressively. They report, good profits, but so what? We're not interested in making a profit. We're interested in making an efficient water system for the communities it serves. That's not happening. So that's why we're doing what we're doing.
So as we conclude this conversation, I want to give you each an opportunity to turn to the camera and face the voters and share with them your final message. What would you like to say?
Sure. Thank you. Should the town meeting at Hingham decide to purchase the water system, I can assure you that the town is up to the task. We'll bring in the right talent, the right skill sets, the right organizational structure to properly and efficiently run and safely run the water system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Paul, final words?
Thank you, Joe. I grew up in this town. I've raised my family here. My grandchildren live here. And as I was saying to Tom in the other room when we were waiting to talk with you, Joe, it's my hope that my grandchildren's children will enjoy the water of this town in a way that's delivered efficiently and under the control of the people that rely on the water for survival. And it's truly my hope that you, as a community, embrace this generational issue. We are at the crossroads of a major decision, ladies and gentlemen. And this town has shown that it's committed and dedicated to serving the greater good repeatedly. We have the track record to support that. We have citizens dedicated to serving government, both in the past and in the present and in the future. This is the right decision, ladies and gentlemen. We're not motivated by profit. We're motivated by serving the public good. We have a fiduciary duty to give you this message, to advance this issue. We are doing this. This is the right decision for this community, and this will be felt for generations to come. I strongly urge you to vote yes for this initiative. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you, Town Administrator Tom Mayo.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank you, Selectman Paul Healey.
You're welcome, sir.
That
Thank you.
concludes our conversations with representatives from the town of Hingham on the Aquarian water takeover.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank
Well
you.
done.